Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Jason.
Hello, everyone.
And Stony.
Hello.
How's everyone doing?
All right.
Well, all good. I just been out of town for really for the last 10 days almost.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, between my silent retreat, and then I came home. And literally I had my nieces, because I came home last Sunday, and my little niece's birthday party was that afternoon evening.
Yeah.
So I didn't have much time to do very much. And then I had to pack up and head to my girlfriend's house to take care of her. She had a little procedure done, and she just needed somebody there to kind of help her.
Right.
Kind of get back on her feet. So I've been out all week. So it was, I also had some concrete work done at my house. So I was glad to finally get that little project.
Oh, so you had that done while you were gone,
you
didn't have to be driving on it. That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, and last night I had to leave my car out because the guy who did my job, he said, give it till Tuesday. I didn't know this, but they basically said that because we have not been getting very much rain, that actually makes it bad for concrete.
Yes,
I
does.
thought it would
absolutely does. Yes.
It would be just the opposite.
Right.
But no. So it's
most people don't realize this, but concrete can cure underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So they were, from my understanding, because I was kind of watching it on my cameras while they were there.
That's fun.
They were putting a lot of water on it while they were doing it. So,
well, the drier it is, the faster the water evaporates, which can cause cracking.
Yeah.
So it can be bad, especially the little surface cracking, but also the interior cracking. Also, if it dries too fast, you're in a bind. So
hopefully it. Hopefully it works out, but I don't have a giant sinkhole in my driveway now, which is nice. So I was tired of hitting that big old bump, when you're driving in. It's like, I've got to get this fixed.
Yeah. It always. I feel like every time I've had something like that, I feel like every time you drive across it, I'm just making it worse. I consciously know.
Technically, you are.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
but it just like I need to drive on my driveway. There was one at the house I was growing up on. I remember driving to and from work, and it was like sinking on one side. And no matter how hard I tried, I still always kind of hit it. And I was like, I just know that every time I'm hitting this thing, I'm making it that just a little bit worse.
Well, I wish I could have been there to see it when they broke it and cleared out all the old concrete. But I thought maybe I had a water leak there. I mean, what was causing that to be washed out? He goes, we broke it. It was only like 2 inches of concrete over that. And I'm like, I wonder why they poured it thin. But there was a hole there.
Could have been a tree that had been cut in the past, even when they were putting that subdivision there.
True.
And if they didn't get the roots out, that's why when you're doing construction, you got to make sure all the organics are going down to the level of clay, and then you come back and compact it with the clay. If there's organics, like a tree stump or something like that, and they didn't get it out correctly, well, once that tree stump starts to decay,
it starts collapsing.
It starts to collapse. And so there may not be, they may not processed it right in the beginning and put 2 inches of concrete on it, and then it was just too late, and it collapses. If it, how deep was the hole? 2 to 4 inches?
I don't know. There was.
Well, I mean, when it was caving in.
The area of concrete, it was like 8 inches
deep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that could have been a stump.
Yeah, it was going down pretty good, and so I would have liked to have kind of they filled it in before they did all the laying the new stuff down, but yeah, so
that's another reason they don't they frown very highly on burying trash now, because the old contractors used to dig a hole, bury the trash, cover it with dirt. Well, over time, the dirt settles into the holes of the trash, and now you get a big hole there. Right. And if that's underneath a driveway or a foundation, now you've got a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's I got it fixed, and hopefully by tomorrow I can actually not just leave my car all the way at the end of the driveway and put it on because it's hot.
Of course.
And so I like to keep my car under the carport, but can't do that right now. Yeah. So, but got all that done. So today has been a really my first day. Yeah. To kind of get, I had to go to the grocery store. I had no food in my house because I mean, literally, I didn't buy anything, and for 8-9 days, I ain't been at home. So, so we got it done.
And then part of your day, you came and helped me, which I appreciate.
I came and did whatever I could do to help you, and hopefully,
as a computer person for many years, with this accident, it's. What's the saying I said? I don't know what I don't know when I don't know it, or however that saying goes. It's just like a whole portion of my life is gone.
Yeah.
And that's being able to do the hardware and stuff like that on a computer, and it's just gone. And I didn't realize it until I started getting into it.
Yep.
And it's just completely gone. So I do appreciate you coming in and helping out with that.
My pleasure. What little I did.
Of course, somebody forgot me who said he was going to come.
No, yeah, you're right. I did. I wanted to.
No. You had a good reason. I understand. Yeah. So I got to mess with you a little bit because we can, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
So other than that, I'm ready to get back on a regular, schedule and try to get back in the gym and try to get my normal routine going again. So we're
will that include shaving?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to shave before she goes because she's coming in this week. I think on Wednesday she's coming in, so I probably will need to shave.
Well, Hottie Doctor has been very gracious in allowing me to grow this beard, but I think it's going to have to come off soon. Just don't tell her.
Okay.
I'm going to have to cut it off soon.
Okay.
So, yeah.
She says I look like a sea captain.
Yeah.
Just tell you what, I spent my time while I was with her trying to go over some of this stuff regarding our topic.
Yes. Okay.
Today, and
was she interested in it?
No. But this was a kind of a tough.
No,
this was
very tough.
This is tough because it kind of falls in that kind of new age type of stuff, and it's just it's somewhat strange. Reading this stuff. I keep saying stuff. I need to stop saying stuff. Reading this material. But
so what is the material, Jason? This was your idea to do this topic. So
it
what
was
is
just an idea that I thought maybe it'd be interesting to talk about. It is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
The Atlantean.
The Atlantean.
And supposedly, when was these tablets written?
Well,
33,000 years ago.
Yeah, it was
better.
The supposedly they're attributed to a figure by the name of Thoth the Atlantean. That obviously he lived in the city of Atlantis when Atlantis was still in existence. And supposedly
he was a priest king,
and he was the son. He was the son of one of these beings called the Children of Light.
Right.
And what the Children of Light are, I don't know. To me, it looks like extraterrestrial in origin. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, because when you can kind of start going down some rabbit holes with this stuff, I
would like to clarify there's not some rabbit holes. There is a lot of rabbit holes you can go on reading this whole text, because we all actually read it.
Right. I listened to the audiobook. I did some YouTube videos on this stuff to try to understand, because this thing is kind of like changed over time. some people say that these tablets don't really exist.
Right.
Maybe it was all made up.
Fun fact. While we were doing this, I went to Black Friday deals. I will give them a shout out.
Right.
And I found the Compendium to the Emerald Tablets written by Billy Carson.
Yeah, I listened to some of his stuff.
He has some fascinating insights. Boy, I'd love to get him on the show one day talking about some of this. But the actual is actually a pretty hard read or listen. Because you kind of have to pay attention and you have to have a very open mind when you do it.
Yeah, because it really kind of talks about, my understanding is it talks about alchemy and understanding how the world works and altered states of consciousness and
the tablets are supposed to be a profound and mystical text that offers, and I love the way this is said, ancient wisdom and secrets of the universe.
Right.
So when you're thinking about that, how long have they been trying to do alchemy, changing lead into gold?
A long time.
Long time.
Well, there's a lot of people that, alchemy was very much. Even through the Enlightenment period,
yes.
Alchemy was very much a mainstream pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I was surprised to see Sir Isaac Newton was very much an alchemist.
But they believed the Atlanteans could change lead into gold.
Yeah.
That was one of the things they believed they could do, and that's why it's so sought after information if it was real or not.
Right. Just kind of FYI for people out there who Thoth is. Thoth, most people probably familiar with Thoth from the Egyptian pantheon of gods. He supposedly was the god of knowledge, the moon, measurement, wisdom, the alphabet, records, thought, intelligence, meditation, the mind, logic, reason, all those kind of things were attributed to him. But it appears that he actually was not a god. He was just a person with some very advanced technology.
A long-lived god. Not God, but, he lived for a long time, supposedly.
Right. Well, there was a way of them kind of transferring their consciousness from body to body, and that's kind of how they... at least how they approached the idea of immortality. Supposedly he's attributed to the actual building of the actual Pyramid of Giza.
Right.
So, which, we've kind of touched on some of this stuff in other capacities regarding who actually built the pyramids, what were their purpose, why did they just stop building them? What's kind of what's going on with that? And now lately a lot of information's coming out that maybe the pyramids are a lot older than what the kind of the conventional understanding of them.
Well, we touched on the fact that maybe the Sphinx and the pyramids weren't built by the Egyptians, but were uncovered.
Correct.
By the Egyptians and just taking credit for it.
Yeah, I'm
leaning toward that.
I'll be honest with you. The more I've read, and this kind of goes all along the lines of I feel like a lot of this information that at one time people, if you brought it up, people thought you were just nuts.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about the UFO stuff. I mean, now it's pretty much everybody's talking about UAPs.
Yes.
And you listen to some of these people that have kind of been kind of banging this bell for a long time now. Bob Lazar and a few of these other people out there that have really been on the forefront of pushing this, that there's now you're starting to see this slow kind of drip of this kind of information that's coming out. It's like they're releasing just a little bit at a time. And, I think if if I remember right in reading about these tablets, that Thoth talk about Atlantis sinking, and that people left Atlantis in flying ships and actually settled in established colonies in Egypt and even in South America.
Right.
It's funny that you would find pyramids there also.
How many times has somebody suggested that the pyramids were either landing sites or some type of a welcoming site for
I think once again, they mentioned in the book of they had done something to kind of mess with the equilibrium of the earth or something to that effect that basically caused Atlantis to sink beneath the waves. I kind of believe that probably it had a lot to do with the Younger Dryas catastrophe at that time. Oceans were rising quite fast.
We talked a lot about that during our Sphinx episode.
Yeah, we did, because it all kind of ties together. I mean, we all know that you hear about the Atlantis story from Plato, who says that his mentor Solon, 600 years before whatever his ancestor had gone to Egypt and had talking to the Egyptian priest, and the Egyptian priest had said, Egypt was a colony, was a legacy civilization from and founded by another group of people, and that supposedly Atlantis sunk into the ocean about that same time. So it appears to be something happened. Mm-hmm. I know some people have mentioned that that probably somewhere around the Azores. I know a gentleman by the name of Randall Carlson, who I do follow quite a bit, really talks about that. But regardless, where the idea of Thoth comes from is obviously if we go and just accept what the tablets say on the surface, that Thoth was not a god, that he eventually would become deified by people thousands of years later, because typically how history works is there are real events and then they become mythicized as so much time passes, and it's just kind of the natural flow of things of how we get to this point. That's why I get this idea of a flood, and it is been popularized that it's become, well, the gods got angry or God got angry in the case of a Judeo-Christian. If you talk to the Sumerians, they've got their own flood story where the gods were angry. So this idea that people mythicize stories to provide a backdrop where most probably this event occurred in a real life context of it was just a bad time to be on planet Earth at that time. Just like you could say it was a bad time to be on planet Earth 66 million years ago when the Chicxulub asteroid struck and did what it did. So I think there's something going on there. But the tablets themselves really have kind of, over time, really started to change when the Greeks came in and conquered Egypt with Alexander. And they were fascinated with what they found. And they actually transposed their god, Hermes, with Thoth.
Yes.
So because Hermes was he was a god of very similar things, where he was a messenger of the gods, and his kind of portfolio included some of the things that Thoth was attributed. So,
well, he wrote the Corpus Hermeticum.
Hermetium. Yeah. Which is
There were similar.
Yes.
There was a lot of similar writings in that and the Book of the Dead with the Egyptians.
Right.
Especially on the afterlife and the soul and possible immortality.
Right.
So
it's just they viewed immortality differently.
Right.
And the way I think, and a lot of times people will get the idea like the book of spells and stuff like that. And really, probably spells is really a wrong term to use. I think it had more to do with just how the ancients, if you subscribe to the idea that societies had reached somewhat of an advanced, sophisticated state, it was their way of describing the natural world and how they manipulated the natural world. We've also touched on, frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
There is some,
one of our favorite subjects.
Right. There is some talk that maybe there was a way of manipulating the natural world through natural means. They just knew, they developed that and they knew how to do it, wherein that would eventually be lost. I do think that Thoth mentions with the Emerald Tablets that his airship was beneath the pyramids or the Sphinx, one of the two. I don't quite remember. But that kind of touches base that supposedly there's a hall of records underneath the Sphinx. They found that the government of Egypt didn't allow people to kind of pursue that area to see if there is a hall of records under there. Supposedly, what's his name? The guy who actually wrote, who transcribed, supposedly he found the Emerald Tablets in the Sphinx or in the pyramid. I think it was in the Pyramid of Giza where he found them. Doreal, I believe, was the guy who wrote what people...
He supposedly translated.
He translated. It's basically what people would read today. That's his translation.
And nobody has ever actually seen these Emerald Tablets. First off, you got to say that.
Right.
When it comes down to dismissing or proving that they're real, he's actually the only person that's supposedly actually seen the Emerald Tablets, and he's the one who translated it. And
that was the hard thing for me starting off this book a little bit. I was reading it, and at a certain point in time, getting through the intro of it, before we even get to the first chapter, I'm like, there's a lot of, for me at least, I'm supposed to assume that these things are real with not a whole lot of merit that I'm seeing here at the beginning. And then we go, before I can even really ask that question, we're getting right into the meat of what these tablets say. And they're claiming some pretty big ideas for me at least.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's very much, it's understanding.
You said at the beginning, you said New Age, and I think that's kind of an interesting term.
I kind of say that because it to me, it kind of fits that.
I'd agree. Yeah,
it fits that kind of genre. If you want to, if people are interested in what the Emerald Tablets are, that's kind of where you're going to find this kind of information. And I'm not going to sit here and just automatically dismiss stuff,
right?
But you don't really have a whole lot to go on other than, I think the earliest text I saw that is somewhat based upon this, I think they dated to the 8th or 9th century in Arabic.
Okay.
And as I said, it's known as that's the foundation of all alchemical thought. Kind of comes from that. It was translated from, I believe, Arabic into Latin, into what they call the Vulgate or the Vulgar, which would have been the common language. It's an interesting thing to read. It's made up of, I believe, 15 tablets. And the last two are like compendiums or what they call appendix So good stuff. I don't know how you go about understanding these things. I had a very difficult time. Really, just my understanding. It said in there you have to read it 100 times to understand the secrets.
I remember reading that and I was like, is reading it 100 times you understanding it or it?
I think it's revealing its secrets.
Right, I get, but what I'm trying to say is, from a human perspective, is reading it 100 times
self-hypnosis?
In a way, or is like you trying to find something, out of something that may not be.
It promotes, truth, integrity, the pursuit of enlightenment.
Yeah.
It promotes a lot of things. Like the Bible does.
Yep.
Like the Quran does, like, the Torah does. And it promotes these things in a way of living a righteous and moral life. Mm-hmm. And so reading it isn't actually a bad thing.
No.
Reading it 100 times wouldn't be a bad thing. Like I said in the beginning, if you go into it with an open mind, you can read a lot of things that benefit you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But you can get. I mean, like I know you mentioned this book, Billy Carson. He's interesting. I listen.
Oh, he's
to him.
out there too now.
He's out there. I mean,
he's out there in a fun way. He's out there. But
he believes that's where Jesus Christ was trained by Thoth into the sacred mysteries.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Matter of fact, he almost thinks of Jesus as an alien. But it's neither here nor there. So he's out there a little bit, but what he believes. I'm not going to sit here and I disagree with that, but
right,
we're all entitled to an opinion. We're all entitled to an opinion, and if you've got facts to back it up, I mean, he makes some good points. There are some similarities that I think kind of. Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, one of the similarities is that the Bible and the Emerald Tablets use light as a force of good.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, they do.
But they
both use that. So
I agree with what you're saying, and it is good. But there's also a lot of, for me at least, there's also a lot of other things that is in this book. It's just a little bit hard for me to really.
Wrap your mind around,
just grapple with, like as far as like what
what's it saying?
Yeah,
and what does that mean?
Yeah, and and the implications of a lot of the things that it's saying for me was just a bit like I don't know if I 100% agree with some of this, but like as far as like star beings coming down and and the gods of a former
that was
ancient,
in the Bible.
I mean,
beings coming in a chariot of fire, the same things. And we learn reading the Bible and studying the Bible, the more you read it, the more you get out of it.
Right.
And part of that is faith. Right. Part of that is being open, because how many times, I've read the Bible a number of times over my life, and I can read the same passage today and get something different out of it than I got 35 years ago, because that's what I needed at the time.
I think I'm just referring to also the fact of like the thing that makes me uncomfortable, and maybe this is something I got to work on, I don't know, is like there's this race of beings before humans that were better than humans. There's this quote-unquote Atlantean people that were so much better, and the tablets talk about this, of like how our people aren't around anymore, but like I don't think you guys would fully ever comprehend what we got going on. And it's like I can understand that from like a spiritual perspective, but like from a physical perspective, that's the thing that's hard for me to really wrap my head around. That feels like aliens. That I kind of disassociate myself from.
I think he mentioned about going to the hairy people. He mentioned about, which would have been basically barbarians for all intents and purposes.
It's just, it's interesting. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I remember I read it through the first time and I was like,
or me for that matter, with this beard going on.
I mean, I think I think it's this is where I had this conversation with some family regarding oftentimes share my beliefs that I do believe the first 10 chapters of Genesis, you need to kind of be careful in how you read that.
Yes.
And
especially with all the translations and adaptations that have been made.
Well, as I'm saying, I mean, we all know that Genesis is attributed to Moses,
right?
Who wrote it. But the fact of the matter is, for the Jews to concern, really, it's Abraham as their start. That is where they begin. The first 10 chapters really deal with providing a backdrop of where all these other people come from, and kind of establishing a beginning. And whether you choose there was an Adam and Eve and an apple and a serpent and you took the bite of the apple and all that, you're free to believe that. If you maybe choose to believe that, maybe that's kind of trying to tell us something else there.
But technically, as advanced as we think we are today, I would like to point out that Moses was the first person to receive information from a cloud and put it on a tablet.
Yeah.
There you go.
You're right.
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah. I mean, it's
sorry, I had to throw that in.
It's interesting, and look, some people get real kind of antsy when it comes to this issue, and I get it, I really do.
But it comes down to faith and people feeling like what I've believed. Like Ian, this is what I believe, and this challenges my beliefs.
I've basically come to the conclusion, I do believe that something happened during this period of time. And the idea of potentially civilizations being cyclical, where we're always being subject to disasters or catastrophism, that societies have been built up and then destroyed and then rebuilt again. And I'm definitely open to the idea of what I call, I live in a little bit of tension. That yes, I do believe that maybe I don't have everything understood correctly.
Right.
And I need to possibly be open to the idea that maybe those stories in the beginning are trying to tell something else. Maybe we misunderstood them, because I know me. There is no absolute. I know me as a Catholic, I'm not bound to accept the actual understanding that there was an actual Adam and Eve and there was no one else on earth and it was just it and there was an apple. Catholics are kind of free to view that and interpret that in a way that's either allegorical or you can take it literally. It's actually, the church has never spoken definitively on the subject. Because for one thing, it has nothing to do with ultimately your salvation. It really doesn't. Nope. So it's not something that the church has told people to get kind of hung up on. So I am basically of the opinion that maybe there's a little bit more to that story than what exactly is just kind of shown in English on the paper that we read today. But just real quick, the 15 tablets are titled, and we're saying this for people if you're interested in going and reading about this. It's very difficult to do this topic justice because it really requires a lot of research to understand this stuff. And
if we were to do it right, we would actually have to do each one of the tablets.
We'd have to do each one.
Go into it, and that's just
For example, like the first tablet is the history of Thoth the Atlantean. Then there's the halls of Amenti, the key of wisdom, the spaceborn, the dweller of Unal, the key of magic, the seven lords, the key of mysteries, the key of freedom of space, the key of time, the key to above and below, the law of cause and effect, and the key of prophecy, the keys of life and death, and then the last two, which are attributed as appendixes, or Atlantis, which, matter of fact, I listened to that, had very little to do with Atlantis, and then the secret of secrets.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite extensive.
I'm getting probably off topic here. Is it appendices? Is that how you say?
Appendices? Yes, that's it.
I was thinking, I was like, I know there's a word for that.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was
appendices, and I apologize.
No. I
know that. I don't know why I said appendix.
No. I'm not outing you.
But yeah. So it's but really the first part of the book just basically tells about Thoth talks about where he comes from, what was going on, who his father was, and about this place called Atlantis for 36,000 years ago. Which, once again, was there an Atlantis? I don't know. We've covered a bunch of topics, and people said that people believe there was a civilization.
Yeah.
That was a seafaring race, and whether they had flying ships and stuff like that, we don't know. I'm kind of the opinion, I don't think they had flying ships, but according to this...
How many similarities in vast different civilizations across the planet talk about the same thing?
Yeah, they do. I mean,
they all have similar...
The Mayan culture.
Yes, the
Mayans speak of... the keeper of secrets, and that parts of the secrets of Atlantis were stored there, underneath the pyramids there. I still think that that we can't explain how other cultures all share the story of a flood myth. Pyramids that exist in Egypt and then in South America.
Yeah.
And not to have any sort of cross kind of understanding, that idea that these just people developed in a vacuum and do the same exact thing. I just, to me...
Well, look at the similarities in that and the afterlife and burial and the soul.
Yep.
There's so many similarities that's talked about in the Emerald Tablets, just the inner self, the soul. He talks about that kind of too. And it's like, wow, when we look at all the aliens and the UFOs and things like that, you only saw little snippets. And then now all of a sudden, even the government's talking about it.
I'm a firm...
And now you have all of this coming out. Ancient civilizations, ancient aliens, and now you're getting all the snippets, but now you start putting all these things together.
Look, I could tell you, there are parts of our Bible that we're familiar with and that we grew up with, and that's kind of the cultural context in which we're kind of operating in. But
right.
I mean, you can read the book of Ezekiel and go, yeah, I could see how maybe ancient people might interpret that in a way, the way they described it. They wouldn't have no way of describing a spaceship and
a chariot,
coming down from the sky and all this stuff.
They used the wording that they understood.
Right. I mean, they would have to try to explain it in the cultural context in which they lived and what kind of language they had to try to explain this. So yeah, you can make that argument. I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea that we could have had alien contact throughout time. I do believe that aliens exist. I believe they're around. I think part of the reason they probably don't want to be around us because we're too violent. We would try to kill them the minute they would try to land. Maybe they interact with people, or maybe they interact with our government in some way. I don't know. There's enough information coming out where I think the government's been hiding something.
Right.
They're getting good at it as our resident hater of AI. We seen all of the stuff from the Kamala Harris campaign with the AI that they're using to show all these people at her rallies?
Oh yeah, it's that's kind of.
Have you seen the one with on the Air Force 2?
Yeah. Well, you know,
there's this. Have you seen that one, Ian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's nobody in the reflection. Wow, I love that one. So they're hiding something, and they're just getting really good at hiding it.
Well, you know, AI is, matter of fact, I think people know that something's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I just kind of been feeling it in my bones.
Of course.
I just think something's going to happen.
And if you're feeling it in your bones, please refer back to some past episodes of the Retrospect podcast on prep work and getting ready for the Great Reset.
I love how we were on a totally different track, and then boom, we're just right back from last week's episode.
Yeah, I mean, well, because
it all kind of plays together,
right.
though,
Well,
doesn't it?
right,
If you think about
yeah.
it, what's happening in civilizations today may have happened in the past.
Oh, you're right.
And we're just getting ready for the Great Filter.
I was just
popping up.
I was just naming the elephant in the room. So
That's
I thought it was
right.
funny.
well, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, it was written in 1930, supposedly by a guy by the name of Maurice Doreal.
I didn't know that it was in 1930. Wow, that's
the
wild.
earliest 20th century is when most scholars believe it was written.
There was kind of there was a kind of a resurgence of interest in what they call hermetic material.
Yeah.
You know, kind of touches back into the alchemy and the
that was a popular time of the Egyptians and the mummies,
the Philosopher's Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
You know, believe it or not, they were able to finally understand Egyptian hieroglyphics. I mean, y'all remember what the breakthrough was? Was the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what enabled them to understand what these things are. Because I believe the Rosetta Stone was Greek and Egyptian, and it was another like ancient language.
Right.
And that's how they were able to make the breakthrough, to make that happen. So, I mean, the idea of you know, making gold, you know, transmutation, that's it goes back a long way. I mean, there's still people who try to do it now. Can it happen? It's not theoretically out of the realm of possibility if you kind of know the right chemical reactions to make to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe it's not as far fetched.
Lead is not that far from gold.
No,
it's really not that far from gold. I'd love to know the scientific parts of it, but I may have before the accident. Just can't remember that shit now. But it's not that far. So, and they've been trying for years. And who was it? Michelangelo? Was it not Michelangelo? What's the other guy? Oh shoot, the scientist guy. Oh well, I can't remember. He tried. He was one of the old guys. Was trying hard. Man, this memory thing is starting to kick my butt.
Well, you know, I tell people all the time when it comes to these things. I know it sounds kind of crazy. And some of this stuff is kind of far out there. It really is. But, you know, I always like to keep an open mind to these things. You know, as I said, whether the Emerald Tablets exist or not, I think the knowledge that's contained in them is something that's been around for a long time.
Yeah,
and
I agree with that.
And it's nothing new. Now, there are many people who felt that Doreal borrowed a lot. And some of it, if you're not familiar with some of this other stuff, and fortunately, I do know I am familiar with some of these other things. And I did catch some things in there that I felt that, yeah, okay, I can see where he got that. But he borrowed a lot from H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he really did. And Lovecraft was, you know, kind of dived into that kind of stuff and dealt with all that. So, Yeah, for people out there, like H.P. Lovecraft, like the Dunwich Horror, and I'm kind of now going back to some of my D&D.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
D&D
the Dunwich
days.
Horror is good, and then of course, I mean, you can't talk about Lovecraft, I think, without referring to the Call of Cthulhu. Like,
right,
that's like such a
exactly.
big thing. That's so. I mean, it's great horror as well as like just I don't know, creepy. Icons and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Lovecraft has the market on this kind of unspeakable ancient horrors from a bygone age or whatever.
Well, there's a fine line when you're, going between open critical thinking and discernment, when you're, trying to have this skepticism and being open-minded.
Yeah.
Anytime you're reading this, mystical and esoteric type literature,
right.
it can drive you nuts if you don't pay attention and just have an open mind when you're, hey, I'm reading this for entertainment, or I'm reading this because this is something from the past. It can literally drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, like you said, even the first 2 chapters were just mind-boggling for you, just trying to wrap around how I can relate to this.
Yeah.
Well, there's a figure in that people out there that want to kind of do some digging on this, but supposedly the Emerald Tablet was attributed to an ancient Hellenistic individual by the name of Hermes Trismegistus.
What a name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding. It's but that's kind of the guy that supposedly when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, they took a lot of this and they translated the book of Thoth and the Emerald Tablet into Greek. And supposedly it became a Greek document. But at the same time, people said, well, a lot of Greek influences entered into it at that point.
I see.
So everything that we know really comes back from the Greek source. I mean, they don't even know what was the original book of Thoth in the Emerald Tablets. The actual true Egyptian, unadulterated by any sort of translations and any biases that might come in on that. But
other civilizations have talked about a sunken city. When was Atlantis first mentioned, and by who?
It was by Plato.
By Plato, that's right. In his writing, the Timaeus and Critias, and but there was still no definitive evidence of its existence. He was just the first person to actually truly mention it as a name, not just a sunken city from lore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a he. I mean, it all goes hand in hand, and Egypt. I mean, we attribute it, but there's a lot of rich history there that you can really. I still think there's a lot more there. But I mean, they've got other places now that have been around. So people kept saying Egyptian. I mean, there was a time before Egypt. I believe it was Kem. That's how those ancient people were called. It was Kemet, and I believe Thoth mentions that when they fled Atlantis, that's who they went to, was the land of Ket or Kemet or whatever the actual name is. So there was definitely a civilization of people there that predated the Egyptians, because Thoth actually predates Egypt. It's actually, they mention him as a deity that came before the Egyptian pantheon that would have later evolved.
But they also plagiarize a lot from that with and when you think about this, when they are looking at their history, the Pharaoh was a deity. So they stole a lot from those things, and he was, or she was, the one who decided what information was going to be passed down. If they didn't like you, they struck your name completely from all writings or stone tablets back then. And so how much of that was controlled for theirs and their history? Like they built the pyramids. No, it looks like they actually just uncovered the pyramids.
Yeah. I've kind of thrown out everything I've learned about Egypt in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot more going on there.
It's still fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
But again, when you come down, what we're talking about, the open-mindedness and the discernment, you have to be able to think for yourself when looking at this and say, okay, well, maybe there's some other things.
For me, the hardest thing to wrap my head around, that initial feeling I was understanding, because I think that it didn't go into a lot of detail about how the tablets were found or if they were even real and all that kind of stuff. The thing that got me about it was it felt like in the first few chapters I was like reading a really interesting Lovecraft book.
Yeah.
Like it was hard to put it in the real world because of how outlandish a lot of the stuff that was talking about. We jump like really quickly into like these, bigger beings, and they're, more intelligent, and they your mere mortal understanding can't comprehend the kind of stuff we were doing, and like that's like right off the bat. And so I remember listening to the audiobook of it as well, thinking like, man, this is a really great sci-fi novel. And I was like, okay, but we're supposed to think this in context of like Egypt and all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, oh, that was what I was meaning about hard to wrap my head around, is like putting it in perspective of like, real life, and all that, obviously being so separated from Egypt and all that stuff. So
now, it doesn't end there.
Oh.
In 1903, Maurice Doreal started the Brotherhood of the White Temple.
Oh,
which is a cult based on the teachings and philosophies of the Emerald Tablets. And it's actually still functioning today.
Get out.
Yep. It's in Colorado. It started in Denver and has kind of moved around after the war and stuff. But yeah, you can actually, they have websites. They have all kind of information that you can use in the study of the books, the Emerald Tablets. But he died in, I think, 63, was it, Jason?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wasn't it 63?
Yeah.
Year before I came to be, but fascinating.
Well,
stuff.
I'm looking at I just pulled up like the Atlantean and what's in the book, and it kind of opens up with I like reading this stuff. It says, I, Thoth, the Atlantean, master of mysteries, keeper of records, mighty king, magician, living from generation to generation, being about to pass into the halls of Amenti, set down for the guidance of those that are to come after. These records of the mighty wisdom of the great Atlantis. In the great city of Kior on the island of Undal, which to me right there, that tells me, okay, island, that's an island kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
In a time far past, I began this incarnation, not as the little men of the present age did, the mighty ones of Atlantis live and die, but rather from aeon to aeon did they renew their life in the halls of Amenti, where the river of life flows eternally onward.
Like it just feels like we're tiptoeing into Lord of the Rings. I'm gonna go sail to the undying west.
Yeah, exactly. It says here, he goes, great were my people in the ancient days, great beyond the conception of the little people now around me. So obviously he's left Atlantis and he's living among what would be eventually the people that would start the civilization that we know of today. Knowing the wisdom of old, seeking far within the heart of infinity, knowledge that belonged to Earth's youth.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it was, wise were we with the wisdom of the children of light who dwelt among us. Strong were we with the power drawn from eternal fire. I really want to find the part dealing with Atlantis falling. And what were the reasonings for that?
I don't remember where that was at in the book. I know you're talking about that.
Yeah. It was then having drunk deep of the cup of wisdom, I looked into the hearts of men, and there I found greater mysteries and was glad. For only in the search for truth could my soul be stilled and the flame within be quenched. Down through the ages I lived, seeing those around me taste the cup of death and return again in the light of life. Gradually from the kingdoms of Atlantis passed waves of consciousness that had been one with me, only to be replaced by spawn of a lower star.
Interesting. And also I feel a bit attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is...
So, all right.
Yeah.
What do y'all think? Is it a real tablets, or did somebody just kind of just...
Well,
there's
no evidence. I mean, there's no really document you can go back, but then once again, you're dealing with something that... there's all kind of people have said, that the Emerald Tablets were taken by one group or another. I mean, I saw people said that the Crusaders took it. Another group says it's
Darn
hidden.
you, Crusaders!
It's in the Vatican. Some say it's in the hidden Vatican archives. Some say it was put into the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Okay.
I saw one thing where they said it was put into the Ark of the Covenant, which some people said the Ark of the Covenant was actually a power source. It was something more than what people say it was, because of some of the things that are attributed to what would happen if people mishandled it, or I really will always love the way Raiders of the Ark, it was done, but
that Ark did not like the Nazis, did it?
No, it did not. I knew that when that showed that scene where the Ark was in that crate and they had the Nazi swastika and it just started burning it off.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not going to be a good thing. And it's like, I don't think you really want to open the Ark, because you're not going to want to look inside of it, because only a certain group of people were able to carry the Ark.
Right.
I believe it was the Levites. I found it funny, and somebody brought up a certain point to me that Levites levitate.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah. I read that. I kind of went,
Maybe it was a source of power and you couldn't be grounded to the earth.
Right.
I know I think you had to wear certain things as well. You had to wear certain clothes, and you had to be a specific kind of person.
There was a certain way that Ark had, and it's funny that's never been found.
Yep.
Or has it?
Or maybe it has.
Dun, dun, dun.
Who
knows?
So, yeah.
This was a really interesting read. We've done a couple of books now, and I'm going to suggest maybe the next book we choose isn't like this one, because this one was kind of tough. Maybe we need to do something a little easier next time, because it was fun, but man, this was tough.
Yeah. This is a tough one to really get your hand.
Still fun, but man.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, look, I mean, there's a lot of great videos on this. There's a lot of topics, a lot you can really dive into if this interests you. My hope it might just get people to maybe look that way and check it out. And
it was definitely a fun read for me, even though, like I said, it was a bit wacky. I think at first, and even still, I think some of the things that the religious beliefs I held on to kind of make some of that. I feel like my initial reaction is to kind of like disregard some of that. But if I'm just curious and I come to it with an open mind and have some fun, it was a cool, interesting read. So.
Yep, I enjoyed it. I know more about this than I knew before.
Yep.
And
knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
So now the next 100 episodes of the show, we're going to be us deep diving into this. I'm playing.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think we could do 100 episodes and still not really get it right.
Speaking of, this is our 150th episode.
Wow.
That's kind of fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
It's crazy to think about that.
Maybe we need, when we record that, we need to mention the actual episode number, like in the beginning.
Okay,
you say your part. Say, okay, what is this episode?
Episode number
whatever.
Yeah.
You know. I've listened to some other podcasts. They'll do that. That's kind of part of their pre.
Yeah.
And when we go to video, we can have a nice little slide.
Oh, is that right? Okay. I see how it is.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to hook up a camera looking at a computer to be able to pull it up.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's
or just do it in post.
In the other studio, the Retrospect is so popular. We have 2 studios, but the other studio has a nice monitor up already.
Off-site location. Yeah. Love it.
Wow.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I think given the lack of historical evidence and the context in which the Emerald Tablets were likely created, it's probably improbable that they are the ancient writings physically left by Thoth the Atlantean. Instead, I think they are best understood as a modern esoteric literature which draws from a rich tapestry of mythological and mystical traditions to convey spiritual teachings.
Right.
And for those who approach the text from a symbolic and mystical perspective, the tablets can still hold some profound meaning and insight, serving as a tool for personal and spiritual exploration. However, from a historical and scholarly standpoint, their origins, to me, are more aligned with a modern interpretation of ancient wisdom rather than just a direct link to Thoth the Atlantean. That's why I ask y'all that, because that's kind of my thought on that. I think it's fun to read.
Of course.
I think there's some information there, and you can use it to be positive and have some things to help you.
And I think he was also like Jason mentioned a moment ago. I think he was also inspired by other Greek, or not Greek, other
all of them, the Bible,
right. And then of course also other texts and other stuff, and even Lovecraft and all the iconic works of that and all that. So I think he was probably a writer that was inspired by a lot of stuff, and maybe he did have some insight on something, but who knows? So anyways, is there anything else you guys want to touch on before we?
I think it was fun. I enjoyed it.
I agree.
Definitely was interesting.
If you guys want to let us know what you think about this, we have an email address, getoffendedtogether@gmail.com, where you can go ahead and give us your understanding or your assumptions about what this is, or you can even read it and let us know how you feel about it. We also have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, and you can everything is Retrospect Pod, so you can just type in Retrospect Pod, usually on Google, and probably find all the different locations where you can get in touch with us that way. But until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Hey, thanks for joining us today and hanging out with us. You're the best. Peace.